The challenges presented to healthcare leaders are growing on a daily basis, and it's really, really important that leaders within healthcare systems are able to learn from each other and understand that there is much more of a need to work across not just national boundaries but regional boundaries. The world is getting much smaller in many respects. The population is growing, there's a much greater ageing population, a changing demographic profile, and particularly here in Singapore, as one of the nations in Southeast Asia, levels of mortality are low and life expectancy is very high, which is a real positive. But what that does bring are the challenges in terms of dealing with integrated care for the increasingly larger proportion of the elderly population who are living longer lives. So that's the first challenge. There's a second challenge, and that's to ensure that leaders are able to focus on prevention of ill health rather than treating ill health. If we're able to invest much more energy, much more innovation, and of course funding into the prevention of poor health outcomes, then the opportunities to use the increasing technological changes to improve treatment will be greater. So that's a second challenge, the need to focus more on prevention. The third challenge is one of investment in healthcare. Here in Southeast Asia, 4% of gross domestic product is spent on healthcare. That's quite low when you look at some of the other developed countries across the world, and the average is around about 9%. But within the region here, within Southeast Asia, excellent healthcare here in Singapore, with excellent opportunities for access to affordable healthcare services. But in other parts of the region, it's very, very poor. So there's the other challenge for public health leaders, and this is the third and final challenge that I would offer, is the need to take a regional approach and ensure that nations within the region here and other regions across the world are able to close the gap in health inequalities and to learn from the stronger nations in regions, such as here in Singapore, and ensure that some of the less developed countries are able to benefit from that.
Our programme is a 2-year programme aimed at part-time students and particularly experienced managers and clinicians and leaders from across healthcare systems. And although this is a master's programme, our design is completely different from the traditional master's programmes that we've developed in the past. First and foremost is the means of delivering our teaching, which is delivered through a blended learning approach, which I can describe shortly. The second element is it's applied very much within the workplace, and it's absolutely important that we are able to equip our students to take the learning, apply it back within their own workplace, and enable their corporate organisations to also benefit from this particular programme. Blended learning is a term that many people bandy about today, and it can mean different things to different people. But to us at the University of Manchester, and working with the Singapore Institute of Management, we're very clear about what that blended learning approach is. First and foremost, it's about enabling and equipping our students to make the most of the online access that there is to teaching material through what we call a virtual learning environment. In other words, rather than attending a campus with physical buildings, you attend a virtual campus where you're still able to access all of the resources and receive the teaching, the seminars, and the most important one-to-one support between ourselves and my team members with the students. We are at the cutting edge of developing technology that maximises the use of online resources, but we support this with 4 residential programmes that will take place throughout the duration of those 2 years. Each one will be of about 3 days duration, but it will be to support the learning. And what we hope to achieve throughout each of those workshops is what we call experiential learning. What that means is that the learning that they achieve through the programme is applied in practice within their organisations and amongst themselves. A third element of our programme, which is very unique is our approach to action learning and applied leadership challenges. Action learning is about creating small groups of between 4 to 6 people, supported very closely by ourselves in faculty, where the opportunity is provided to the students to work together in these small groups and test out their ideas, test out the learning, but most importantly, to actually put into practice some of the learning that they've applied, and to do it in a very supportive and collective way in which each student supports each other. And action learning is an accepted form of teaching in today's world, but it's great because it originated in Manchester with Professor Reg Revens, and we've continued that approach through, and all of our activity in terms of our delivery is about taking the original thinking and apply it in practice, and that's absolutely critical. The real highlight of it is the opportunity to engage in much smaller groups in terms of work-based activity. So in other words, because these will be professional people, the whole programme will be designed around their professional needs, and when we ask them to undertake activities within the programme, where at all possible, we'll be asking them to do that within their place of work, so that the links between the learning on the programme and its application in practice is seamless. Okay, the benefits for students who attend our programme is first and foremost that they will get exposure to the global nature of healthcare systems, and we'll be encouraging them to think much wider and beyond their own organisational boundaries. That is part and parcel of our first golden thread for the programme. What is a golden thread? Well, a golden thread is a theme that will run throughout the programme and will be applied to every module that students undertake. So internationalisation is a critical element of our programme. A second benefit is the importance of putting the patient at the heart of everything that healthcare systems are there to do. Now that sounds like a given, but it's so difficult to achieve. And in different healthcare systems across the world, putting the patient at the heart of what it does is a huge, huge challenge. And that's why it represents a second golden thread of our programme. So everything that students will be doing must put the patient at the heart of what it's doing. The third benefit is the encouragement for students to think more collectively and lead through networks. If we think of the challenges in all healthcare systems across the world, given the changing demographic profiles, the increased life expectancy, there's a much stronger need for integrated care. And if you take our elderly population, which is growing exponentially, there's so much need to ensure that different healthcare service providers and commissioners are able to integrate the care for our older population, because very often the members of our older population will present with multiple long-term conditions, and it's important to integrate the care across those different needs, and that's the importance of leading through networks. The fourth benefit is the encouragement for students to think much more creatively and innovatively. The challenge for leaders today is to be creative and to be innovative and to think more widely about the leadership impact. And part of that is moving away from the position where it's all about me as the leader to us as the leadership, a much more collective approach to leadership. And creativity and innovation is an important element of that. We're a great believer in maximising what's increasingly being called the wisdom of the crowd. With access to social media, the vast increase to e-technology, e-health, e-learning, there's a need to ensure that leadership reaches into that and allows the greatest possible access for the greatest number of people to have an impact on the improved social outcomes that society deserves. The benefits to corporate organisations who sponsor students to come on our programme are multiple. First and foremost is the opportunity to align the learning of the programme to the organisation's aims and objectives. All healthcare providers today and all healthcare commissioners today work to values-based visions. And within those values-based visions, will be strategic aims, objectives and outputs, and most importantly outcomes that need to be achieved. The ability of our programme to support that is very, very strong. We are able to tailor the programme to the corporate values and the corporate visions of sponsoring organisations, and by applying the learning in the workplace, then it feeds into the continuous improvement that healthcare organisations are seeking to achieve. Secondly, this is a master's programme. We do need to encourage academic rigour in terms of the quality of the learning that the students are able to show, and yes, they do need to be assessed. But where at all possible, our assessments will also focus on work-based application and the impact that the learning has on transferring that into practice. So that's a second huge benefit, I think, for a corporate organisation in being able to do that. The third benefit to an employer is the notion of this programme not just as a master's programme that leads to a very credible qualification, but also it is first and foremost about developing leaders. It's about developing the individual leader, but it's also about developing individual leaders within the context of their organisations and beyond those organisations. As it's an academic programme, clearly we need to be confident that potential students are able to cope with the academic rigour and the academic demands of the programme. So we will be looking for a good first degree at an undergraduate level, normally in UK terms of an upper second class pass and beyond. We also need to be confident that students have a good understanding and a good grasp of English language, because the programme is fully taught in English and it requires good knowledge of English language, both in terms of writing and speaking. So we would be looking for strong evidence of ability to both write and speak in English. And that can be achieved in a number of ways. Firstly, through international English language tests and achieving the right level within that, but also GCSEs, English certificates. So we are looking for those as minimum qualifications. A third aspect, and this is ideally something that each of the applicants would have, and that's at least 2 years management experience within a healthcare environment or within a leadership role. But most importantly, and beyond just that experience, is about people applying who have a real passion for wanting to improve healthcare and a real passion for improving the outcomes that are good for society. So within all of those criteria, every individual applicant will be interviewed, and will be interviewed by myself and members of my team. And I, as programme director, do have flexibility in terms of applicants who apply for the programme being accepted based upon that range of criteria, but also using my own professional judgment and experience. We encourage both clinical and non-clinical managers and leaders to apply to join our programme. And of course, not forgetting those who have a real passion for improving healthcare services in whatever healthcare system they either live within or work within.